Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Daniel, aka HashLips, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can create this dApp where you can view all the NFTs of a contract, claim them, view your NFTs, and add some secret logic. I'm going to show you how you can do all this using the thirdweb SDK with React, as well as some UI components from thirdweb. This video forms part of a series, so I highly recommend if you want to watch the first video, go ahead and go to the thirdweb with HashLips playlist and watch create a custom Solidity smart contract using ContractKit. This will get you set up with the first part. In the first video, we discuss how you can use ContractKit to create yourself a contract and have it show up on thirdweb's dashboard like this. And in this video, we are now going to build out the dApp. A few things to note about the dashboard before we get started. In the first video, you saw the dashboard and I told you that you could actually find your custom contract over here. If this doesn't show up for you, you can always go ahead and enter into the URL, the thirdweb.com, the network, and your contract's address. This will bring up your contract. And if you want to make sure that it is on your dashboard, you can then always go to the Settings tab, scroll down, and set it to be on the dashboard. Another thing I would like to mention has to do with the claim conditions. Now, in the previous video, we have set up our phase conditions. The thirdweb team is always innovating, and they've informed me that these fields below may change to say, instead of how many NFTs can be claimed per transaction, to be per wallet. So just be aware of that and just read the descriptions just to make sure which fields you are altering. In the previous video regarding the NFTs that we have batch upload, we had a supply of 10 and an unclaimed supply of 10 as well. But now you can see I claimed one already. The reason is I had to test this before I made this video. But just so that you know how you can do that, a simple way is to just use this claim button. You can always click on it and claim yourself one of these NFTs. So, that being said, I hope everyone's now up to date. And now we're going to take a look at the documentation and start our application development. To get started, let's take a look at the technologies that thirdweb provides us. If we go to products, we can see the SDKs. SDKs are software development kits, and it's made so that the development process is seamless and integrates with the flows that thirdweb provides. Now, we can click on Get Started, and there are various SDKs that you can use. The one that we are going to focus on today is the React SDK. The thirdweb React SDK is very powerful, and with it comes a bunch of hooks that we can use. On the left-hand side, we can see that they give us ways to interact with the contract via hooks with React, and it's very straightforward and simple to use. Today, you are going to learn about some of these hooks and how to use them. The React SDK can either be installed from the CLI using npx thirdweb create app, which will add the SDK and other awesome tools with it. Or we can go ahead and install the SDK along with ethers to an existing project that we have running React. The SDK will be the first set of tools that we use. And we're also going to be using the UI components today. So underneath products, we can go to UI components, and we can see that it's this plug and play solution for front-end components. Think of components as a group of HTML elements, logic, and CSS on top of that. It handles complex logic so that the front-end developer can simply import the component and it does most of the work for us. To see a list of the components that we can use, click on Start Building. Here we get an overview of what the components do. Currently, there is the Connect Wallet button, the Web3 button, NFT Media Renderer, as well as the IPFS Media Renderer. These are really helpful, and we will be using most of them in our app today. So, keep this documentation open, as well as the React documentation as well. We will be referring back and forth between the documentations for you to truly understand how to literally build anything into your dApp. Now that you know the technologies that we're going to use, let's go ahead and get started by creating an application this time with the thirdweb CLI. This is very straightforward, so you can go to this URL and then let's go ahead and copy this command. We're going to run this command the same way we did in the previous video using the Visual Studio Code terminal. Next, let's go ahead and click on Open. We're going to open the desktop itself and then make sure that we go to the terminal at the top and click on New Terminal. If you are an experienced developer, then feel free to use a normal terminal, but for non-coders, this is an easier way for you to understand and have everything in one place. Now that we can see we're on the desktop as our root, let's go ahead and paste the npx thirdweb create app command, and then go ahead and hit enter. The thirdweb CLI will open and ask us a few questions. The first one being, what is our project's name? And in my case, I'm going to call this the iDApp and hit enter. Next, we get to select which framework. For me, I'm going to use next.js. And then, what language? I'm going to use the superset of JavaScript, TypeScript, and hit enter. And now, the CLI will go ahead and build our application as well as install all the dependencies. So give it a second to complete. We can see that it was successfully created. And we can verify this because on the desktop we have the iDApp folder. This is the project. Over here it tells us that we can run yarn dev to start the development server, as well as yarn build for a production. Keep in mind that you can only run these commands in the root directory. And all I mean by root directory is that the application or the terminal needs to be open in that folder. So the next thing for us to do is go and open this iDApp folder in Visual Studio. Go to File, Open, and then in your desktop select the iDApp folder and now click on Open, or whatever you have called your app. You will be able to verify this by seeing your app's name over here. So let's go ahead and run the first command, and that is yarn dev. This will start a development server running our application. The application is the template application from thirdweb, and you can access it now as it's running. We can see it's hosted at HTTP, localhost, and port 3000. I can simply hold Command and click on this link, and this will take us to the bare application template. So just understand, this is now hosted locally on your machine. And every time that we are going to change the code and save the files and we refresh, we should see the changes applied. The next thing for us to do is to understand the project structure so that we are comfortable coding in it, as well as remove all of this code so we start off with a blank application. Going back to the code, one thing that's important to understand is in the pages folder, the _app.tsx. The only thing that you need to understand from this file is that this is our entry point. And as you can see, we have a thirdweb provider wrapped around our actual application. The thing that you need to pay attention to is changing the active chain ID. Currently, mine is set to the mainnet. But if we can remember in the previous video, our contract is deployed on the Goerli test network for Ethereum. So the very first thing we need to do is actually change this out. I'm going to change mine to Goerli. Now you can change this to whatever network you are working on. Now that that's set in place, we are going to start with the index.tsx file. This is all the code that you have seen in the front page of the application. And also, as we go through everything, you can always go back to the documentation to see what these features do and how you can implement certain logics, like I will show you as we continue. But that's just a reminder. If we take a look at the home component, which is a next page, we can also see that it's importing some CSS styles. And we can go to this folder and see that there are the styles. Now for this particular tutorial, this is not a CSS tutorial. So what I will do is we'll go to the CSS file and I'll remove everything and only show you the CSS classes that we are going to add. And CSS has to do with the styling of an application. After adding them, I will give you a second to duplicate the page. And then we'll carry on. The reason is there's a lot to cover and I want to focus more on the functionality than styling. Let's go ahead and do that right now. In the home.module.css file, go ahead and replace everything in this file with these three classes. We are going to have a .container, an iLogo, and a info section. So I'm going to give you a second to pause the video and just duplicate this exactly, and then save the home.module.css file. Then we're going to go back into the index.tsx file, and I just want to show you what changes it actually had on the application itself. So if we go to the application and refresh right now, we should see how much of an impact styling actually has in an application. The impact of styling is big, but we're going to style it in our own way. The next thing that you need to do is go to the index.tsx file and remove almost everything like so that we are just left with a div with the class name, our container, which will give it a 24 pixel padding, the connect wallet component, and this is a component from the React SDK, and closing with a div. This is how it should look right now. And if we go back to the application and refresh, we should be left with this elongated connect button. The connect wallet button has some cool functionality already built in. As you can see, it will allow me to connect to my MetaMask. And we haven't written this logic at all, because if we look at the code, it only says connect wallet. This is an indicator that we are dealing with a UI component. So what I am going to go and do is show you in the documentation of the React SDK. If we go to the UI components, here is the connect wallet button. And exactly how we have implemented this, it's imported and being used. But that's not all, because this is a UI component and I've shown you the UI components overview. We can go ahead and click on the connect wallet button, and over here we can actually see what parameters it takes and how we can customize it. You can even add optional auth mechanisms. But for today, I simply want to change the accent color and the color modes. I want to make this a bit more custom to my colors of my application, which is a bit more purple. So what you can do is go ahead and copy these two lines. These are the parameters, and let's go and add them in here to our connect wallet button. Then I can simply search for a color picker in Google, and I'm going to select a kind of accent purple for us to work with. Copy the value. Then we're going to change this color of the button. So back in the code, replace the accent color with that value of your choice. Save the file, go back to the browser, refresh, and now you can see we've got a themed button with the accent color being our color of our choice. We probably want to reuse this button on multiple pages. And seeing that we are going to create more pages later on, let's go ahead and make this top section containing the connect button and later on adding some links into a component. So let's go ahead and create a new folder. We're going to call this components, and in here we will simply create a new file and call this the header.tsx. Components like these can be reused, and we don't have to type all this logic out every time we add it to a page. So to create a new component, let's start off with a const header. This is our component's name. We will say that this is a type of functional component and is equal to a simple function. A component needs to return something, so in our case we're just going to return an empty div for now. And then let's remember to export our default header. And that is our very basic component structure. Next, what we'll do is go to the index.tsx file and go and cut out our connect wallet. Go to the header and rather place it in here. Then hover over it and we can just simply use our IntelliSense to import the connect button. Now that we have this, we can actually go ahead and get rid of the connect button import on the index, and instead we can import our header component. We have to remember to import the header as well. And there we go. So adding this and this header means that we can now reuse this header whenever we create a new page. Looking at the application, nothing really has changed. So let's go ahead and add to our header. I want us to add some links that will go to different pages. So the first thing we can actually start off by doing is creating these base components for our pages. We have a home page, but now we need an NFT page, a My NFT page, and also a write note page. Seeing that the index page is already a base template itself, I'm going to go ahead and add a paragraph and just call this home. Then let's go ahead and copy and paste this index file, and I'm going to call this the NFTs. So now that we have the NFTs page, let's go ahead and change this as well as the export. Here we'll write NFTs. It's also going to have the header, but most probably going to have a different styles file, because this style refers to the home module styles. So a similar way, we can go ahead and copy the home.module CSS and change this to the NFTs module. Regarding the styles, we're going to replace it with these two classes. Very similar, but a little bit different. So go ahead and copy the styles in the nfts.module.css. Save the file. Let's go back to the nfts.tsx. So I've noticed that the name is NFT, and let's change this to NFTs, as well as the home should change to NFTs. And there we go. Now we have a simple page for the NFTs, and we can see its type of next page, as well as a styles file that's linked to this page. Now let's go ahead and do this again, and this time we're going to call this my-NFTs. And when we have this over here, we can now call this my NFTs, like so. Replace it in here. And let's go ahead and replace it in this file, because what we'll do now is copy the CSS modules again, and this time just add my NFTs. In this case, the my NFT styles are going to be exactly the same as the NFT styles. It's just good practice if you follow a format to keep to that format. So even though they are similar, just have an extra file specifying the different styles. So that stays as it is. And now we've got the My NFT page. The last page that we'll need, we're going to duplicate it again. And this time we're going to call this the right-note. And again, this time we're going to say this is going to be the right note component. Replace that. Let's go ahead and replace it over here as well. And our styles file would most probably be called the same. Then we can go ahead and duplicate a styles file. And here we'll say right note as well. The right note module CSS will have a bit different styling. We'll have these 4 classes, so I'll give you some time to copy it. In the meantime, if you are wondering how you can deal with CSS and how you can change styles and stuff, I do have a video explaining the basics of CSS. Okay, so our pages are now set up. We can go ahead and close all of these files that we now have open. Just make sure every page is saved. And let's focus again on our index page. So our index page looks like this. And if we go and check it out and refresh, we can see there's the home text. But now, how do we get to the different pages? Well, this is where Next.js is really powerful. Because we have our pages already set up in the pages folder, and it's type of a next page, what we can do technically is in the browser over here in the URI, we can now say NFTs. Hit enter, and this should take us to the NFT page. And we can verify this by looking at the text over here. But a user cannot be expected to go and play around with these URLs. So how do we create some kind of linking system for us to click on it and go to these different pages? We can set that up in our header component, because the header component is shared amongst all the pages. So let's go ahead and start off with a normal div tag so that we can start grouping them. And in here, we'll add some links. So let's go ahead and add a link element. Now, this link element is actually a next link element, so we need to import it at the top. And as well, provided an href attribute with the path that we want the link to go to. A / means it's going to go to the index. So this, we're going to add another a tag, and this is just to represent our link. And we're going to call this claim. So we also need one for the NFTs. And here we can write NFTs. The same goes for my NFTs. And notice that the spelling needs to be exactly the same here that it is for these pages. And over there, we can just simply give it the name, my NFTs. We have one more to add, and that is our right note. So we're going to say right note, and here we can just say right note. Now, if we save this and go and check out our application, let's refresh, we can see the links here at the top, although it doesn't make sense with the styling. But we can click on the home, NFTs, my NFTs, and right note. And as you can see, the pages are actually changing in the URL as well as in the browser. So let's go ahead and just sort out the styling a bit. For the styling, we're going to do it the same as we did for the pages. We're going to duplicate a styles page and rename this to be our header. Let's go ahead and switch out these styles. And here it is. These are the 4 classes that we will be using in our header component. So make sure that you save this exactly. And then we're going to go back to the header component and make sure that we import the styles from, we're going to go back and then we're going to say styles, and we want the header.module.css. So that's what we need for the styles. And right off the bat for our top div, we can give it a class name, and the class name that we are going to give this is the styles dot, and now we can say container. Save this, and let's go back to our application, refresh, and now we can see that these styles look a little bit better with all the links on the left hand side and our connect button at the top right. Perfect, but we are not done yet, so let's go back and sort out the styling of these text elements. For the link styles, what we need it to do is determine if we are on that page and give it a different style class. How would we do that? Well, we can go ahead and import the use router hook that is provided by Next, and then we can say that our router is going to be equal to the use router, like so. What we can do now is for the tag over here, the A tag, we can say that we want to give it a class name only if a certain condition is true. So what we can check for is if the router.path name is equal to the /, and we do this with a ternary operator, we can then say, if it is indeed here, give these styles active. Else, give us these styles, which is simply the link. So we can go ahead and apply this to each of our A tags. The only thing that we'll need to change is the condition, what it checks for. So we're going to paste that in here. And now the IntelliSense, or the prettifier, just corrected all the formatting. But you can see that each A tag now has this condition on it. So if we save this and we go back, refresh, we should see our nice styled links. And if we click on them, we can see the colors change as well as the pages. Now this might look like magic, but it really isn't. All it is doing is it's asking the router, the object that we have, if we are on this page, and if it is, then swap out the styling of one of these text objects. So it's fairly straightforward. But now we have a setup. We have some links, we can connect, and we technically have a dApp. But now comes the awesome part. Let's go ahead and build out the NFT page first. Essentially, we would like all the NFTs that's on this contract, whether they are claimed or unclaimed, to be displayed in a nice way. How can we do that? Well, thirdweb provides us with the React SDK and awesome hooks. So in the documentation, we can go to the NFT section, and we can see there's this use NFTs hook. And over here, we can see this is how you would implement this. We're actually going to make use of the use contract hook as well as the use NFTs hook. By using these two hooks, we can see that if we use this, it will give us a list of the NFT tokens. So go ahead and copy these two lines. We're going to go back to our program, and in the NFTs file, this one over here, we are going to paste this at the top. Now, we can see there are some kind of errors, so how you can resolve this is basically by first importing the hooks from React and thirdweb, and we also need to import this use NFTs here at the top as well. We then cannot just give that, so we're going to need to pass in the contract's address. Where do we find our contract address? Well, we can go back to our dashboard, and here it is. Let's copy that, go back, and paste it in. For the second hook, we don't need to specify these options. You can if you only want to select a certain range of your NFTs. In my case, I want to select all of them from the contract. Now, this is what's happening over here. We are essentially using the use contract hook to get access to a version of our contract, an instance that we can use in the front end. So this is what the contract object is. And we can go ahead and console.log this contract out. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to save this and go to my browser, refresh our application, right-click, inspect, and let's go to the console. So if we refresh, we can see this is the contract instance. We even have the full ABI and awesome functions that we can now call. And that's just to show you what the contract is. Next, we take this contract object and we use another hook called useNFTs. We pass it in the contract, and this hook automatically gives us a list of our NFTs. It gives us back data, but we rename this as NFTs. It also gives us a loading state as well as errors, which we can then use in our front end. I'm now going to console.log the NFTs out so you can see the list. Refreshing the page, what will happen is the use NFTs are now going to get the list of our NFTs, and we have 10. So let's wait and see. There we go. There's all 10 NFTs, and we can even see that the first one has an owner. That's the first NFT that I've minted for myself. Each of these NFT objects look like this and has the metadata attached. So we can use all of this data to render it here in the front. Jumping back in the code, what we can do is let's replace this and give it a section. A section is just a nice way of declaring a section instead of a div. So I'm going to give it the class name so we can add some styling to this as well. This is not going to change anything, but this will have styling of info. Then what I want to do is map over these NFTs. So I'm going to give it a condition to say nfts.map. Now what map does is basically iterates over an array, and we get to return it back. So I'm going to say that for the NFTs in the map, the NFT needs to return something. And in our case, we can now simply return the nft.metadata.name. If we refresh, what we expect to see is a list of the names of our NFTs rendered on the front. And here we go. You've noticed that there is a slight delay when we're getting the data back. And that's why that loading actual attribute is very important. So let's go ahead and implement that loading so that we at least know that something is happening while we're waiting for the data to return. The isLoading variable is the one I was talking about. So what we need to do is first ask the question and say, is something loading? Then if it is, then we're going to simply return a p tag saying that something is loading. And else we're going to return this map. And this is how it should look. So when we save that and come back to the front end, we can see loading. And once the data is now ready, then it will show. This way you can actually have a spinning loader bar or something creative. In my case, I'm simply just replacing the text with the loading as the process is kicking off at the back. This is all good and we have names rendering, but how do we actually get the NFT to display? Well, thirdweb actually has a cool UI component for that. And let's go and check it out. In the documentation, we can click now on the NFT metadata renderer component. And here you can see that it is actually used in conjunction with some of the previous hooks. And this is actually how it looks. We can simply provide it this component with a metadata attribute. I am simply going to copy this line and then go back to my code. Let's go ahead and replace our return statement. And as we can see, we need to import this. So we can just go ahead and add it to our imports at the top. Now for the metadata field, we already have nft.metadata. And this NFT is referring to this one over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and go back to our application. I'm going to close the console because we don't need that and just simply refresh. We are now seeing our loading bar, and then hopefully soon we should see our images. And here we go. There's all of our beautiful, beautiful images. And how cool is this? This component really takes care for us to go and get the data from the decentral storage and renders it. As well as, keep in mind, if you use this solution, it caches. So basically, when you try and do this again, it's going to be even more effective and render immediately. So I'm going to just wrap this all in a div and maybe specify a height for my image. Maybe we'll make it 200. As well as, let's add a border radius style. So we have a height as well as a border radius. Whenever we render lists in React, we need some kind of key. And the key needs to be a unique identifier. So I'm going to use the metadata.id in my case. I'm also going to add a p tag. That's going to be the nft.metadata.name. And now let's go and check it out. Refresh our page, and then hopefully it should look a bit better with the styles that we've added. And absolutely it does. Now we can see the NFTs along with their names. And I would say this is a job well done. Now for the next page. We're going to focus on my NFTs because it's quite similar to this page. The only thing that's different is that we need to now filter out only the NFTs that's ours. So that should be really easy. So seeing that the next page, the My NFTs page, is very similar to the NFTs page itself, we're going to go ahead and copy everything inside of the NFTs page and go and paste it in here. So let's go ahead and paste this. We of course need our imports. So let's bring these over as well. We essentially now have exactly the same pages, but for the My NFT page, we need to now start filtering it. So let's close the rest of the pages and focus purely on the My NFT page. How would we filter the data that we are rendering? Well, we know that the NFTs being returned has owners attached to them. But we need some way of detecting the address that we are connected to. So what I am going to do is I'm going to say const address is equal to something. And I'm going to make use of the use address. This is another hook provided by the thirdweb SDK. This hook will allow us to return the address of the person connected to our site. Well, all we need to do is basically add a filter for our NFTs. So we're going to filter an array, and we are essentially going to say any NFT that owner matches our address, we should then go ahead and map over them. And that's about it. Back in the application, we can see that the NFTs, there's nothing here. That's because we are not connected. So let me go ahead and connect. And now that we connected, you can see the one NFT that I own. So we have our NFTs and my NFTs. How cool is that? In the code for my NFTs, I would like to swap out this to rather have an ID as well as the name show up. And the reason for that is because later on, when we have our data coming back and we want to write notes to them, we need to understand what ID we are going to write the note to. So this will only display for my NFTs, not all the NFTs. But before we add all the read and write logic, I think we should focus on how to claim an NFT. So let's go ahead and build out the index page next. In the code, we can go ahead and close this file, and let's open the index. Here we can start off by adding a section, because this is where we will place all of our stuff. And now we probably need some kind of title and a description. For that, I have already written out an H1 and a P tag, saying the eyeballs project and a little bit of a description. So just go ahead and add your title and your description as an H1 and a P tag. Next, I think we should add a logo image at the top. To do that, I'm going to simply use one of the NFTs and drag and drop it inside of my public folder. I will then rename it to logo. Now that our logo is in the public folder, we can go ahead and add it to the top of our section. Currently, this is how the application is looking. And our claim page, we have our logo, the heading, and a description. One thing that we are missing is a button to claim. So there is something special that we can use from thirdweb, and that is the Web3 button. This Web3 button can be used to call functions on your smart contract, and we're going to use it to claim one of our NFTs. To implement the Web3 button, it's pretty straightforward. What we can do is we can say Web3 button, and here make sure that it's imported at the top. And then it takes a few parameters. The first one is the contract address. This we already know where to get. Then we can add an action. The action is a normal function and also has the contract that we can pass. Then we can call a function on this contract. And in our case, we want to call the contract.erc721.claim. And we want to claim one NFT when someone clicks this button. Between these two tags, we can say claim I. And let's go and just save the page. It restructures. And that is it. That is how simple it really is. To provide some space between the description and our button, let's just create a line break. And there we go. This is how it looks. So you'll notice that you can also connect to your wallet with the button alone. However, if you do connect, then you should be able to claim. So I'm connected and now it says claim I. Before I go ahead and claim one of these NFTs, let's go style this button so that it also looks purple. If we go back to the code, remember in our header, we added a color mode as well as the accent color. We can go ahead and add that to our button as well. So I'm going to add these two here. Let's go back, refresh, and now we have a purplish button. So this is pretty cool. I can verify that if I click on my NFTs, that there is none. There's the NFTs, there's my NFTs. So let me go ahead and claim an NFT and see if I can add it to my NFTs. Let's click on the claim I and MetaMask should pop up. And there we go. And I'm going to say confirm. The transaction is successfully completed. So if I now go to my NFTs, here we go. I own ID1 of Abstract I. How cool is that? All right. So now we have a claim page, we have the NFT page, my NFTs page, and now we need to implement this write note page. Just a little bit of a recap. In the previous video, we've created a custom NFT contract giving the owner of an NFT the ability to write a small message on that NFT. So this is the implementation that's on the contract, and now we're going to see how we can interact with that on our dApp. Back in the code, let's go ahead and click on the write note file. This is going to be the page where we would need two input fields. One to facilitate the ID number of the NFT note that we want to write, and a field for the note. Now, I'm going to start off by pasting a bunch of boilerplate code that you can copy, because this has really nothing to do with the actual thirdweb logic, but just the form that we will need. At the very top of our imports, let's go ahead and import the useState hook from React. We need to manage some state for our input fields. Inside of the component, we're going to add these pieces of state, ID and note. These will be linked to our fields to keep track of the value. And in the return statement, what we are going to add is our form. At this point, you can pause the video and write this down from here to here. Essentially, what this is basically doing is we adding our header, a section, then we have two input fields. One labeled ID, which connects to our state up here. And every time that this ID input changes, then this variable would be updated. And the exact same for our note. It connects to this text area. We then have a button with a few fields that are red. But these we'll add in just a second. This button, when clicked, we want to connect to the blockchain and upload our new message. So what do we need to carry on? Well, much like the NFTs where we had this contract and a use NFTs hook, this time I'm going to copy the use contract code and add it here to the top. Now we have access to our contract, and we do have a special hook so that we can actually extract a writable function. And here it is. It's called the use contract write. Much like we had the use contract read, this one takes in a contract, which we have, and exactly the function name as we have it in our contract. We have this write note function that we added in the previous video. And like before, when we did this with the NFTs, instead of data, this returns a mutate. This mutate we rename to just simply be write. You can name it whatever you want to. It also has a isLoading and an error variable, which we can use to keep track of errors and loading states. Now, all that's left to do is to, of course, import these. The only thing that's left to do is to actually call this write function. And we can do this here on our button. On the onClick event, we can simply call write. And as we see, write takes in a few parameters, which is basically going to be the ID of the token as well as our note. Now that we have this, we can go and test it out and actually write a message on our NFT. This is how our write page looks like. We have added the label and the input, as well as a label and a text area with our write note button. Now for the ID, we have to verify that we own number ID 1. So we can enter 1. And for the note, I'm going to write, this is my NFT. Very proud of my NFT, so that will be the note. So let's go ahead and click on write note. If all goes well, we should get a pop-up from MetaMask asking us to confirm this transaction. And here we go. We have to confirm this. And once it's done, this should be written to the blockchain. However, we don't have a way of reading this note yet. And that I want to implement in the My NFTs field. I want to add a button so that when we click on it, we can read the message that's associated with this NFT. For that, let's go ahead and open My NFTs page. On the actual NFT itself, I want to add a normal button, and this we'll call read note. This button will have a onClick event, and inside the onClick, we will have a function that we're going to create called read note. We don't have this function yet, so we're going to create it up here. Let's get rid of that console. So the read note will be equal to a function. Now, just to illustrate to you a different way of reading data from the contract, we are going to use a different method than the hooks that we've used before. we are going to actually use this contract that we have here at the top, and we are going to use the call method. Now we are going to specify the notes because the note is a mapping existing in our contract. And because we can read from a mapping with index, we're going to give it an ID. We don't know what this ID is yet, so we're going to pass it as a parameter, and this will be a string parameter. For this to work, we will need to add the string over here. We know that the nft.metadata.id has that field that we need to identify the current token ID. If we now go back here, this will work, but we want to actually see the data being returned. So we can say .then, what do we do with this data? For now, I'm going to console.log the data. We can also add a catch statement to log out the error, if there is any. And that is it. If we click on this button, we should see a logout of the note and refresh the browser. We should now see our NFT popping up, and there's our button. If we click on read note, we know that we are passing in ID1, and in the console we can see our note that we have written to the blockchain coming back. To have this display somewhere on our page, what we can do is now say we have a message and set message, and this is going to be equal to a use state from React. Initially, this is going to be an empty string, but let's find a place for us to display this, maybe below the header here. Firstly, I want to say if there is a message, then we should display a p tag. And inside the p tag, we put the message. Else, we are going to say, don't display anything. We can also optionally maybe say this is our note. Okay, so in order to make this work, all we need to do is replace this console.log with set message, and if there was an error, maybe we set it to be empty. And that is it. Now we should be ready to rock. Let's go and check out our application. Let's click on read note. And hopefully we should see our message, and there it is. Note, this is my NFT. If we go to write note, let's change this and say, hey, we're gonna write, and now we'll wait for the MetaMask pop-up to complete. There we go. Let's go and confirm this. While we wait for that to complete, I just want to go through the rest. So this is what we've done today. We've got our display, we've got the claim page up, we've got this cool my NFTs, and hopefully if we click on read note, this should change to hey. And I really hope that you enjoyed the tutorial to this point. But we are not done yet, because we need to now deploy this so that people can actually use our application. When it comes to deploying code these days, it's made very simple through services such as DigitalOcean, Cloudflare, or even Vercel. I'm going to be showing you how to deploy with Vercel for a good reason. Vercel is actually the company that made the framework Next.js. So deployment is extremely easy with them. What you need to do is go ahead and install this first. This is the CLI for Vercel. So let's go ahead and copy this line. We can head over to Visual Studio Code or any terminal. Press Ctrl+C to exit the terminal's execution. Press Command-V to paste this, and then we're going to run it. This will install Vercel's CLI globally, and then we can simply run the commands. While you are waiting for the installation to complete, go ahead and go to vercel.com and click on Start Deploying. When you are here, you'll get the opportunity to create yourself an account. I have already logged in, so I can go to my profile. And this is the dashboard. Currently, I have no applications that's being deployed, but soon we will see our dApp here. After installing Vercel globally, you never have to install it again. All you need to do, you need to say Vercel and hit enter. Vercel will then go ahead and ask us a few questions. For instance, is this the application that we want to deploy? The answers are usually highlighted in bold that is selected. So we don't have to type anything in like why, because it's already selected. We can just hit yes, enter. Next, it's going to say, where do you want to deploy this to? To my HashLips account. This is the only account I have, so I'm going to hit enter. Next question is, do we want to link it to an existing project? Absolutely not. I see no is already selected, so enter. And then, what is the name of your project? You can type something in, but I am fine with the i-dap. So enter again. Now, in which directory is your code located? And yes, that's absolutely right. This is in the root. So enter. Vercel will run some checks and ask us if we want to modify any of these settings. No, we don't. So hit enter, and there we go. It's busy deploying to Vercel. This is a link that you can go and expect, but if we go to our dashboard and refresh, it's already there. Now it's busy building and deploying, so we give it a few moments until it's ready, and it will let us know in the terminal. So now we can go back to our application, click on this, and if we go to either one of these domains, we should see our app live for anyone to use. And that's how easy it is to deploy with Vercel. Now obviously, there's a lot more that you can do. You can also get your own domain set up, but that is a story for another video, because this video was extremely long, but I do hope that you did enjoy this with me and that you've learned a ton. Most importantly, I hope you saw the power that thirdweb provides with their SDKs and how easy it is to integrate and build a dApp. This is fantastic, and I'll be making a lot more videos like this, so in the comments section let me know what you want to see next. Also, if you feel like I've earned your subscription, then do so. Join the family and come and learn tons with us in the future. I really hope you have a fantastic day, so cheers for now.